The day the HOA tried to steal my gate, they showed up smiling like missionaries and carrying forged maps like scripture. They acted like my land was some clerical error, like 200 acres of Colorado mountain forest could be talked out from under me with a clipboard and a fake plan. What they didn't know was I hadn't bought that land for comfort. I bought it because after enough fire noise and human nonsense, silence starts to feel like survival. I wanted the kind of silence you can hear in your teeth, pine trees moving in the wind, old timber creaking ravens somewhere up on the ridge. Nothing else. No cul-de-sac gossip, no board meetings, no cheerful little violation letters tucked under a windshield wiper. Just an old logging property, the bones of a sawmill, one private road, and a rusted gate that looked like it had given up somewhere around the Reagan years. After 20 years in the fire service, and one brutal night that left my spine wrecked and my head permanently wired for worst-case scenarios, I was done with systems, done with being processed, managed, and smiled at by people who'd never bled for a thing in their lives. So I rebuilt the old mill into something livable: solar on the South Slope, diesel backup in the root cellar, my own well satellite internet perimeter cameras, motion sensors, and a custom electric gate at the start of my mile-long access road. Not cheap, not pretty, but solid, and more important, legal. I had every document you could want. County records, survey plats, title, history deeds going back decades. That road was mine. The land was mine. No easements, no shared access, no HOA jurisdiction, no gray area. Then one Tuesday morning in May, I heard tires on gravel. I checked the live feed and saw a white Range Rover at my gate, polished like it had never touched dust before that day. Out stepped a woman in one of those expensive hiking outfits people wear when they want to look outdoorsy without ever sweating in it. Blonde bob, perfect posture, clipboard in hand, the kind of woman who looked like she'd called the manager since kindergarten. She pressed the intercom. "Is this the Eddington property?" she asked, bright and chirpy. "It is," I said. "Oh, wonderful. I'm Karen Maddox, president of the Aspen Cliff Summit HOA. We've finalized Phase 1 of our community development on the adjacent ridge, and as part of our regional master plan, the access road through your property has been designated for shared public corridor use. Emergency access, pedestrians, cyclists, that sort of thing. We'll need you to remove the gate." I just stared at the screen for a second because sometimes a person says something so arrogant your brain has to reboot before the anger kicks in. "You're joking," I said. She smiled wider. "Once a master plan is adopted, compliance becomes mandatory. It's about safety and regional cohesion." That was my first clue she was dangerous, not because she was loud, but because she lied like she was doing you a favor. I went inside, grabbed my boundary file, came back to the intercom, and read the relevant lines right into her soul. Private road, private parcel, no easements, no encumbrances, no HOA authority, no shared use, end of story. Karen's smile slipped just a little. "I may have to escalate this," she said. "You could be obstructing emergency access protocols." "Then escalate," I told her. "And next time you come uninvited, wear blaze orange. We've got mountain lions." She didn't laugh. A few days later, I got the letter certified mail. Heavy envelope, fancy letterhead, the full suburban theater package. The HOA had filed a petition called Safe Passage for All to create an Aspen Nature Access Corridor. Sounded noble right up until I saw the attached map. That cheerful little red line ran straight through my road across my lower lot and looped behind my workshop like they were sketching a bike trail through a man's life. There were signatures too, more than 200 of them. At first glance it looked grassroots. Families, retirees, nonprofits, hikers, do-gooders. But I reverse-searched the site they'd built and found stock photos from Europe. Slovenia, if you can believe that. Karen was trying to sell a fake Colorado dream using somebody else's forest. That's when the cameras started dropping. Not failing cut, 2 perimeter lines went dead near the lower gate. And when I rode the ATV down there, I found fresh tire marks and an electronic panel mounted next to my keypad. Clean install, not mine, not old, and absolutely not there the day before. Somebody had tampered with my gate in the middle of the night. Luckily for me, I've never trusted one system when I can build 3. I pulled the footage from my offline backups, and there they were, 3 people in reflective HOA vests, 2 men and a woman crawling around my gate at 2:30 in the morning with bolt cutters and a tablet. One of them installed the override panel. About an hour later, an SUV rolled through my now open gate, drove all the way up near the barn, then turned around and left like they were already taking measurements in their heads. I called the sheriff's office. The deputy came out polite but tired, the kind of man who had probably spent too many years refereeing neighbor stupidity. I gave him the footage, the timestamps, the photos. He said he'd file it. I could tell by his face he didn't yet understand what kind of snake pit he was walking into. That night, Karen posted an update on the HOA site saying their community access pilot program had begun. Pilot program. That woman had people cutting into my gate in the dark and she called it a pilot program. That was the moment I stopped treating this like a misunderstanding. I walked down to the gate, ran my hand over the steel, looked at that fake override panel they'd installed and smiled. Because here's the thing, people like Karen think rural means stupid, private means isolated, and quiet means weak. They mistake politeness for surrender. I decided to teach her the difference. It took me less than a day to build the trap. I rerouted the gate. Wiring left their little override box in place as a decoy and connected it to a secondary access point half a mile down an abandoned service road from the old sawmill days. I'd blocked that road years back with timber and cinder blocks, but now I cleared just enough of it to look tempting. Just enough for somebody in an SUV and a superiority complex to think they were winning. Then I buried trip sensors in the gravel set high frame rate cameras in the trees, wired floodlights on a delay, and mounted a directional mic disguised as a trail cam so I could get clean audio. If they came back, I didn't want assumptions. I wanted names, faces, plates, and their own words, hanging them. They came back 3 nights later. It was a little after 3 in the morning when my phone lit up. 2 SUVs. Same white Rover plus a gray Toyota. 4 people this time, all wearing those ridiculous HOA safety vests like criminal trespass becomes official if you add reflective tape. One of them leaned toward the panel and said, clear as church bells through my mic. Looks like he didn't fix it, another voice answered. Karen said it's still unlocked. That right there, that was gold. They triggered the decoy, piled back into the vehicles, and drove straight down the old service road. 5 seconds later, the floodlights came on and lit the whole clearing like Judgment Day. Cameras caught everything. Faces, plates, tools, the exact instant confidence turned into panic. Then the Toyota dropped a wheel into a shallow sink and snapped something underneath. Another SUV fishtailed, trying to back out, and slammed into a log I'd left at the edge of the ditch. One woman screamed. A man yelled, he set us up. No, sweetheart, you set yourselves up. I just gave your bad decisions better lighting. I called dispatch while they were still flailing around in the mud. Reported active trespass, illegal entry, tampering with private infrastructure, probable property damage. By the time the deputy arrived, the HOA squad was trying to free the Toyota with scrap wood from my burn pile. This time, when I handed over the footage, the deputy's expression changed. That afternoon, Karen called all honey and poison. I understand emotions are running high, she said, but involving law enforcement hurts the community. That's the thing about bullies. They always rediscover peace. The second consequences show up. I didn't answer her. Instead, I hung a sign under the gate camera that read, congratulations, you've just committed a felony. But I wasn't done. There was a useless little sliver of land sitting next to the HOA development, overgrown and ignored, just enough acreage to qualify for membership once it changed hands. So I bought it through a holding company and joined the HOA under a name that meant nothing to Karen. 2 weeks later, I was getting welcome emails, bylaws, invitations to meetings, and wildflower seeds to celebrate new growth and unity. Nothing says unity like bolt cutters at 3 a.m. Their online portal was a gold mine. Petty arguments about mailbox colors, complaints about wind chimes, the usual suburban psychodrama. But buried under the nonsense were board minutes, planning budgets, survey invoices, and draft maps. And that's where I found the real play. The nature corridor was bait. The real project was a future access road cutting directly through my land, dressed up as wildfire preparedness and community integration. Hidden in the appendix was a phrase I'll never forget, utilizes existing forestry trail currently obstructed by private barrier. Private barrier. That was my gate. My legal, recorded, paid-for, privately engineered gate. I went to the next board meeting in flannel and old boots and sat quiet until Karen brought up easement negotiations. Then I raised my hand. Just to clarify, I said, does the HOA currently have any recorded easement through that property? Karen smiled the way people smile when they're trying not to choke. Not yet, but we're exploring options. Right, I said. Because planning development over land you don't own after documented unauthorized entry sounds less like planning and more like trespass with stationery. That room went dead silent. Cracks started showing after that. Then I filed a motion for an independent audit of HOA expenditures tied to phases 1 through 3. To my surprise and Karen's visible horror, it passed. 2 days later, the twist walked up my driveway. Brian Lutz, vice president of the HOA, showed up at my gate looking like a man who'd just found out the devil billed hourly. I buzzed him in and let him make the long walk under every camera I owned. "She's losing it," he said the second he hit my porch. "She's threatening board members, asking people to backdate votes, locking down records. I didn't know about the break-ins, I swear." Then he handed me a manila envelope. Inside was Karen's private version of the Phase 3 plan, annotated parcels, projected value bumps, cost shifting through HOA dues, and one memo labeled Pre-Compliance Forecast. In that memo, she outlined pressure tactics for non-member landowner service complaints, code enforcement sweeps, zoning, harassment, intimidation. Next to my name, she had written, "Obstacle requires containment." That was the moment the story changed in my mind. This wasn't one pushy HOA president trying to widen a road. This was organized pressure dressed up as community planning. A land grab with a smiley face logo. And once I knew that I stopped playing defense, Karen sued me first. That still makes me laugh. Her complaint accused me of harassment, defamation, obstruction of community development, unauthorized surveillance, the whole desperate playbook. She wanted to flip the script and paint me as some paranoid mountain lunatic terrorizing innocent suburban volunteers. Problem was, innocent people usually don't get caught on video with bolt cutters. My attorney, Kendra Olston, filed the counterclaim within hours. Civil trespass, vandalism, fraud, malicious prosecution, conspiracy, emotional distress, injunctive relief, full discovery. And once discovery opened the doors, everything Karen had buried started floating to the surface like bodies in spring thaw. The hearing was a massacre. We played the video, we played the audio, we showed the maps. The survey invoices dated weeks before the public petition, the manipulated boundary documents, Brian's sworn statement, the internal budget notes. Kendra had this calm way of speaking that made every question sound polite, right up until it snapped a vertebra. When Karen took the stand, she tried the polished version of herself. Civic-minded, composed, misunderstood. Kendra asked why over $9,000 of HOA money had been spent surveying land the HOA did not own before any public grant application even existed. Karen said it was part of a regional initiative. Kendra slid over the dates. Then she slid over the county parcel records. Then she slid over the forged maps. The judge leaned forward and said in a voice flat as winter stone, "Miss Maddox, you may want to consider the consequences of perjury." Karen asked for her attorney. That was the first real crack. The second came when someone from the county planning office anonymously handed over records showing altered digital signatures and flag submissions Karen had pushed through unofficial channels. Then 2 more landowners came forward, older folks, both pressured by the HOA in similar ways. Suddenly, it wasn't my story anymore. It was a pattern. The forensic audit finished the job. Karen had been siphoning HOA money through a consultant tied to family billing. Absurd amounts for land use strategy and inclusivity branding, which is apparently rich people language for steal it and call it green. Buried in an encrypted file was a target list 15 privately owned parcels, each tagged with notes about vulnerability, legal weakness, and pressure strategies. Mine was marked "Barrier to Phase 3 eliminate if legal path fails." You ever read something so cold? It clears your anger out and leaves nothing but focus. That did it. The DA moved. Search warrants followed. At the lodge in Karen's home, they found doctored plat maps, false drafts, backdated approvals, and a USB drive loaded with file histories, showing exactly who altered what and when. Even the HOA secretary eventually admitted Karen had ordered documents rubber-stamped and emails deleted. By the time trial wrapped, the whole thing had gone from neighborhood conflict to full-on corruption circus. The verdict day packed the courtroom. Reporters lined the walls, bloggers whispered over laptops. Local officials sat in the back pretending they were there out of civic duty and not pure curiosity. Karen wore giant sunglasses indoors, which is always the wardrobe choice of a woman who knows the walls are closing in. The judge read the findings one by one: fraud, conspiracy, record tampering, nonprofit abuse, attempted easement forgery, criminal misconduct under organizational authority. Then came the sentence. Prison time. Personal financial penalties, asset seizure, dissolution of the HOA, restitution to the landowners they'd targeted. 12 hard counts, 12 hits of the gavel. And the crazy part is, I didn't feel triumphant in that room. The real victory came later when I drove back up my road, the same road Karen thought she could rename with a committee vote. And the gate opened exactly the way it always had for me and nobody else. A couple months after everything settled, the valley got quiet again. Not the fake quiet Karen liked to sell in brochures, the real kind. Wind in the pines, gravel under boots, distance. A few former HOA people reached out. Brian included this time as actual neighbors instead of boardroom extras. The old logging shed on my property got rebuilt into a retreat for disabled first responders. Simple, private, no dues, no committees, no one pretending community means control. That maybe was the only good thing Karen accidentally built. She reminded everybody out here to read their deeds, verify their lines, and never hand power to people who treat paperwork like a weapon. Because that's the lesson I learned late. Greed rarely shows up looking like greed. Most times it arrives polished, smiling, talking about safety, unity, and the greater good, right up until it needs your gate, your road, your land, your peace. And if you don't know exactly where your boundaries are, somebody else will be more than happy to define them for you. These days there's a new sign on my gate. Not angry, not threatening, just honest. Private road community of one. Come in peace or don't come in. And under that, one more camera, solar-powered, motion-activated direct upload to a remote server, because peace is beautiful, but peace without protection is just wishful thinking. So here's what I want to know: when people in power use community as an excuse to take what isn't theirs as fighting back justice, or just a cleaner form of revenge. Tell me what you think in the comments. Who was right, who crossed the line, and have you ever dealt with somebody who thought rules were just another tool for control?